visas as well.
The NIW for pilots has been a topic of much conversation and confusion and stuff. Could you fill us in on the successes you had and like what type of cases there are that you would accept, or what background you see? Just fill us in on how that all works.
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, it's getting harder now than it used to be, especially this year, this summer, this spring. We're starting to see more and more requests for evidence and higher denial rates than before. So I guess we have to be a little bit stricter on who we take. But the labor shortage alone is just not enough for the USCIS to grant a national interest waiver. But we've known that for a while. But even so, the cases that seem to be approved, the pilots have to have a lot more special skills in terms of training and safety. Those are really two areas that I like to look for. Additional responsibilities, not just hours, not just experience.
So like with training is like how many hours they've trained or how much they've trained other people?
It's other people. Yeah. I mean, you do get lucky. You hear cases where like someone is just a first officer with a relatively limited amount of hours. See, pilots, they measure their experience not in years, but in hours. So on average, you probably look at about 1,000 hours to mean something near a year's experience. So normally a pilot with about 10,000 hours probably has flown at least 10 full-time years, probably a little bit more than that. Mm-hmm. And you generally want to see more experience compared to less, but it also depends what the pilot has done and yet how he or she can impact the United States going forward.
So, and when it comes to safety, what does that entail? If you said like it's like training and safety, what is the safety aspect? How do you review that for a potential client?
Well, if they have a background, with their airline, they have additional training in safety. They work with their airline or their previous airlines on safety measures, ways to make the airline safer, ways to make the industry safer. And most pilots don't have this background. And most pilots don't have these additional responsibilities, but the ones who do, I just think are stronger cases for sure.
Very interesting, because we have seen an uptick of pilots contacting us about this stuff. And I reviewed the resume, and I wasn't aware of how many hours is equivalent to years, but they would have like 5,000, 8,000, and they kind of want to bring them here because of the boom in private jet travel. They want to have these kind of people. But I was like, maybe we could do a perm kind of thing over the long term, EB3 or EB2, probably EB2, but not an NIW version of it. But I'm keen on doing it, even testing it out, telling the client, okay, these are the risks involved. But if it works, it's a wonderful category to do.
Yeah, perm, as you know, is dependent on the employer. So really, it's tough to find airlines, whether they're large or small, that want to actually go ahead and sponsor a pilot. And that's two reasons why. They're going to sponsor a pilot knowing they might not get that pilot for 2 years. Most of the time, the pilot's not in the United States. They're flying, let's say, in Europe or Asia somewhere. And you got to wait for the whole perm to go through. Then you've got to go through the EB2 or the EB3 process. And so are they willing to spend the money? Are they willing to wait? Perm, there's issues with perm. There's long delays. There's uncertainty. So there's just a lot of factors why airlines just don't want to do it.
It's kind of coincidence. We're having this discussion today. I just had a random conversation with a colleague today where a group of pilots from one particular nation that has an E2 treaty with the United States had contacted the attorney. And we're brainstorming. And I was like, you know what? Maybe like if they create a company in the United States, becomes a petitioner for an E2 visa. I haven't done this aspect before, but I've heard people starting business in the United States and bring key employees or something like that. There's even a controversial one where this one bakery in Los Angeles opened up somewhere Southeast Asia, had the E2 treaty, and they would just ship here and pretty much have the people go clean their house and wash their car and do the lawn. Abuse was happening, but they're bringing in like dozens and dozens of people like this. So I'm like, maybe like you make an airline here that outsources out. So they hire the people that work here, but then they outsource out to different planes. This is sort of like H-1B, where the majority of H-1Bs go to these Indian engineers who there's 3 or 4 companies that en masse suck up all the H-1Bs. And then they do on-site employment for as independent contracts for other companies and stuff. They contracted. They hire the company, the H-1B petitioning company, and then the people would just send their employees to work on site. It's like, well, would that work for pilots? I'm not enough of an E2 expert for that aspect, but that'd be something interesting if you get a bulk number of pilots and they want to put their money together as an investment.
It could. I mean, in E2, yeah. I mean, there's at first I thought you were talking about the E3 visa for Australians, because that there are Australian pilots do have an easier time getting in a similar visa to an H-1B. But I'll give you the downside of that. First of all, is a lot of these pilots would have to give up a good job flying somewhere else in the world to move to the United States for just a short-term visa.
Yeah.
Are they willing to give that up? Because the way the aviation industry works, it's all based on seniority. So if you work for an airline for 10 years, your salary is going to become higher and higher every year. Then if you come in the US and start at a new airline, you're going to be at the bottom of the pay scale and have to build yourself back up. So for them to be willing to do that, they either, in my opinion, have to be quite young and inexperienced, because they're more willing to, start over again, or they just really want to come to the United States because whatever aviation market they're working in